It's an early morning in July. Chris and a group of reenactor friends are in full 17th century costume at Worcester Cathedral. They're extras in a film about the city's historical past.
The Battle of Worcester is one of the most important battles in history because it marked a turning point between absolute monarchy and the beginnings of the supremacy of Parliament.
The main part of the shoot is to take place 200 feet up on the roof of the Gothic bell tower.
The mood was really good. I was feeling quite excited. I'm really looking forward to this. This is read about it, thought about it for a long time.
To reach the roof, Chris, Nick and the whole crew have to climb 235 steps up a narrow spiral staircase. As they begin, the cathedral staff warn them it's a tough climb.
He warned us it's very steep, it's very difficult. I just had this kind of blind, I've been up castle towers before, so I'll deal with it.
After a brief rest in the bell loft, the group continue on up. They're just over halfway when Chris starts to struggle.
I noticed that Chris was slowing down behind. He was being encouraged, given water, take his time.
Seemed to be never ending and the walls were getting closer. My stomach was beginning to churn, increasingly feeling unwell.
But he keeps going, keen to reach the top of the cathedral.
And it was getting slower and slower and slower, and I could hear people behind me going, "You all right? Yeah, I'll make it."
He does, but as Chris steps out onto the roof, he collapses.
My hands were shaking, legs were shaking. People were trying to help me get up. My legs were just completely giving way.
Chris suspects it may have something to do with his diabetes, but he's never told his friends about his condition, and now, with filming underway, he doesn't want to make a fuss.
So one of the film crew went over, gave him some water, tried to look after him. We carried on filming at this stage, thinking he was going to, suddenly refresh himself and get involved in the movie.
Let me crawl away into a corner and give me 3 hours and I'll just get out of everybody's way.
The set photographer takes these pictures as the crew and reenactors continue to film, while Chris takes a breather, still insisting he's okay. But minutes later his condition starts to deteriorate and he's forced to lie down. The crew immediately stop filming.
I thought the worst, and I thought he may be having a heart attack or something like that, because he looked more and more grey.
Cast and crew are worried, and a member of the cathedral staff calls 999.
The paramedics came quite quickly, put a heart monitor, took his blood pressure. It was quite high, so they thought, this is a bit more than what we think it is.
And something about my blood going from 17 to 19. They kept on checking my blood, and the levels were going higher.
Chris needs to get to hospital, but he's more than 200 feet up, and the only way down is the narrow, steep stone spiral staircase. Minutes later, the fire service arrive and offer assistance.
They got a plan for 2 of them to go down, me in the middle, and then 2 behind and trying to help me down that way. They couldn't even get me to the door to start going down the stairs.
Chris is just too poorly. There's only one way to get him off the cathedral tower, and that's from the air. A Coast Guard helicopter is dispatched from Cardiff. It takes 36 minutes to arrive. Ollie Padbury is the pilot.
We could see the cathedral from miles and miles away. Seeing the height and its location in Worcester concentrated the mind a little bit that this was going to be quite an unusual rescue.
Ollie has 30 years' experience, but even for him, this is no ordinary recovery.
I can remember clearly looking at the spires on top of the tower and looking how thin they were and thinking, I don't want to get anywhere nearer those than I have to. We needed to get quite close to the building to minimise how far the winchman had to be winched down, but that puts the rotor wash closer to the people on the top. My concern there is picking up bits of debris that are loose on the tower and either hitting somebody on the tower or chucking a bit of debris over the side to somebody on the ground.
Everyone is evacuated from the roof except the key emergency workers looking after Chris. Down on the ground, Nick is worried about his friend.
He's not good up there, and we started to get quite concerned about potentially is this life threatening? Is this potentially the end of Chris?
A passerby films the helicopter as it hovers precariously above the bell tower, just feet away from the 4 imposing spires. The 7-ton helicopter is forcing air at 60 miles an hour down onto the historic cathedral's roof and directly onto Chris.
Downdraft was amazing. Never felt a wind as strong as that.
The helicopter's onboard camera shows Chris below on a stretcher. Pilot Ollie holds the helicopter steady as the crew begin to lower Winchman Sam down. There's no room for error. If the winch catches on one of the spires, the helicopter could crash down onto the roof.
We had a very small area to work to. Although the top of the tower was quite big, the winching area that we had to work with was really very small. There's a small walkway around the edge of the top of the tower, and that's where we needed to get Sam down to. So it required a very fine hover to produce that.
With great accuracy, the crew lands Sam on the roof. After a quick assessment, he realises they can't winch Chris up on the stretcher. The downdraft could swing it into the spires. Chris is strapped to Sam. Once they're both attached, the precarious rescue begins.
Whatever happens, he says, don't reach out. And then he was like this absolutely huge hand, just poof.
Even without the stretcher, they swing out over the edge of the building, worryingly close to the spires.
And I'm suddenly looking straight down the side of the cathedral, and he's like, oh yeah, that's that's unique.
The crew skillfully stabilise the winch cable and successfully pull Chris into the aircraft.
We all knew there and then it was something we'd remember, and I'll certainly remember this for a long time.
After being flown a short distance to a local playing field, Chris is transferred to an ambulance and rushed to hospital.